want to introduce Rabbi Lori Shapiro, who is a good friend of ours for quite a few years, who currently is the Director, Senior Consultant for Interfaith and Outreach Initiatives at the greatest Hillel in the country, the Hillel USC, whose Executive Director happens to be Michael Jesser, of some relationship over there. And Lori has graciously agreed to teach us and to work with us dealing with the spirituality of the holiday. I'm not going to read a full bio, it was on her PR material, but other to say, she's a leading young rabbi in our community and one who I'm sure you will enjoy learning from.
Thanks. And finally, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Honey. Where are you in the room? Thank you so much for hosting tonight. This is beautiful. Thank you. We're here tonight actually because of Shaare Zedek, and there couldn't be a more appropriate name for a hospital for the Yamim Noraim, for the days of awe, because Shaare Zedek, as we know, mean the gates of righteousness, and the very image of those gates are what we stand before during this time of year. What I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about is what is the meaning of this time. The rabbis teach us refuat HaNefesh, refuat HaGuf. If we heal our soul, we will heal our bodies. So it's in the spirit we can begin to do the work that we need to do, as I call it, clearing out our inner schmutz, so that we can have a healthy guf. So much of us living in this world today understand the mind, body, spiritual connection of what creates a healthy being. And so many times in this city, I was speaking with Michael just before, we go into the Yamim Noraim and we're in a high holiday service in a theater, or we're in a high holiday service in a synagogue with rigid seats, or in a place that feels cold and uncomfortable, and someone talks at us instead of bringing us to life and involving us. And Judaism, I argue, has never been meant to be so frontal. And so in that spirit, I'd like to invite everyone to take a moment and create a Kehila Kedusha. Let's transform this community of strangers into a unique community that will only be in this constellation right here, right now. So if you're sitting near someone you don't know, please let's introduce ourselves. Hi. I'm Lori. Really, turn around. I'm Lori. You're what? Please. Nice to meet you. I know Boy, you give Jews a moment to talk, and they go on forever. We will have time to talk again, and now that we're creating this kind of warmth and common parlance, we've made a connection, and we will need those connections in a few minutes when we rejoin one another to do some exercises. But just to start out, let's just do a little trivia here. So tell me, Yamim Noraim, days of awe. Rosh Hashanah is not mentioned in the Torah at all. You know, we're told to have a day of something, which are one of 4 days that we call Rosh Hashanah, none of which are Rosh Hashanah. So what are the 4 days that we know this holiday as being called? Whoa, what? Leilonot? No. What? Yom Tru'ah, correct. So it's the day of the Tru'ah, the sounding of the great shofar, and that comes biblically. So we have first this day of the Tru'ah, the sound of the shofar. But what is that? You know, Maimonides teaches us that the Tru'ah is actually the sound of our souls trembling. That it's not a day to mark this particular day of the Tru'ah. They actually say the second day. Can anyone get the second day? A day of... Okay, Yamim Noraim. That's not one that I was going for, but we have Yom HaZikaron. Thank you. So we have the Day of Remembrance, and that also is found in the Torah. That it's Yom Tru'ah Zikaron, that we see it that way. And that's where Maimonides speaks of trembling, that we are on this day to awaken our souls. And when we hear that Tru'ah, it's Ke'ilu, as if we are Avraham Avinu, standing on Mount Moriah, remembering the greatest higher self that exists and our destiny that we are to meet through our actions. That is the trembling of Yom Tru'ah, or Yom HaZikaron. remembering that larger destiny that each of us is to walk in our lives. What's the third name? Anyone else? It goes with those Shaare Zedek. Oh, I heard someone say.
Shaare Zedek.
What is that?
Bituli Shaare Zedek.
That's a part of our liturgy. Beautiful.
Yom Hadin.
Yes, who said Yom
Yom
Hadin?
Hadin.
Beautiful. Yes, Yom Hadin. So here we are, and a few years ago, Michael always likes to remind me I did a law and order drash for Yom Kippur, and I talked about how we are on trial. All of us are on trial, both collectively and individually. And with that, I bring forward a beautiful insight I had a year ago at Beit Shuvah. I'm on staff there as a spiritual advisor. I work with people in recovery to help them on their journeys revivify their lives through a belief in something larger than themselves. And last year, a man walked on to the bima and said, 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in my cell in prison, and someone came to me and said that I was going to meet a parole officer. Because you see, 26 years ago, I got really angry for about 5 seconds. And that anger brought me to such a place of beyond that I murdered someone. And I stand before you today, this man said, to tell you that our God is a forgiving God. So whatever we have during this time, whatever schmutz is clouding our neshama, whatever it is, we all have our secrets. We all collectively and individually have something we're dragging around. Our God forgives this. But this is the time to know it, and this is the time to do it. So we gotta get busy, right? So luckily I brought props. We don't have to do it alone, is the first thing. None of us have to do it. Wouldn't that be horrible? I'm so glad. My husband and I last year, we were married, and we didn't take a honeymoon, we took a honey earth, and we went around the world. And it was so cool. I mean, we saw like religious syncretism. You see like Buddhism slowly turn into like Hinduism at Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And then like you go to India and you see it intermingle at the Red Fort with Islam, Hinduism and Islam. And then you go further west and you watch Christianity begin to intermingle and Judaism. It's just amazing. Our world is incredible. But the cool thing I liked or appreciated about Judaism is when I'm sitting with the sadhus in Nepal, and they like have this ascetic lifestyle where they've given up their home, they're giving up their community, they live kind of as the mendicants on the streets. And I talk to the guys, they hang out and they speak English, and I'm like, don't you get lonely? Like, don't you ever feel like, why do I have to do it all alone? And they're like, no, this is my life, it's wonderful. It's so good. But like, really, like, think about it as Jews, right? Like, we get to do this together. There's no shame. We all have something that we're guilty of, and we all have the opportunity to do this growth together. And this is the time. So I bring us back to wherever we're going to go for the holidays. If we're sitting in that theater or that concert hall or wherever it is that our Yamim Noraim are going to be, to bring a little of the work that we're starting tonight. Again, we're right now hovering between two beautiful slichot. We have the Ashkenazi slichot on Saturday. We have the Sephardi slichot coming up this weekend, I believe. So we're kind of like Benenu. We're between these two moments. We're officially bringing in our liturgy and our awareness of this time of year. So we have before us these two sheets. I'm just going to introduce them. And it's about Heshbon HaNefesh. What's Heshbon HaNefesh? Heshbon HaNefesh.
Accounting of the soul?
Right, literally. It's an accounting of, you go to a restaurant in Israel. Heshbon b'bakasha, right? This is an accounting of the nefesh. This is seeing what's going on inside. But how do we do this work? So the Musar tradition and the Hasidic tradition have given us, and I kind of balance between the two, they've given us this beautiful sort of neshama calisthenic that we can do for our soul. And the calisthenic really is to do an exercise where we can actively, both intellectually and through actions, begin to say, all right, I'm really going to think about this. Some of us journal, some of us go see movies that help us cry and create a catharsis. But I'm just going to start as my premise. I don't think it's enough to show up on Rosh Hashanah day and say, okay, I'm going to start now. The rabbis were very wise. When actually did they start this whole process for us? It's not slichot. It's earlier. Huh? Lifnei, before Rosh Chodesh Elul.
Oh, Tisha B'Av.
What? Tisha B'Av? Oh, Tu B'Av.
Tu B'Av.
Your love or Tisha B'Av? Tisha B'Av, Lifnei. Huh? It's before. Achar. The 17th of Tammuz. It's on the 17th of Tammuz that we collectively, what a beautiful symbol, right? In the Bible, the 17th of Tammuz is not only connected to Tisha B'Av when the walls were surrounded in 69 after the Common Era. That's when the Romans first surrounded the ancient temple and the walls of Jerusalem. But on the 17th of Tammuz, we're told by the rabbis, that's when Moses descended from the mountain with those first luchot, those first tablets, and saw what all of us do here in California, Los Angeles, which is have a kind of mad Bacchus, a mad sort of time where we forget our center and we forget our God. We build our own little golden calves out of Lexus SUVs and overusage of oils and our dependence on all sorts of things, whatever addictions we have in our lives. And we build our idols and we forget this God that sustains us of the earth of our ancestors. So the 17th of Tammuz is when Moses crashed down the tablets and then begged God to forgive us. So that work starts then. Then you can walk into Tisha B'Av and say how the sadness gets really deep. So first you kind of commit your sin, then you go to like the day of Tisha B'Av where you really lose everything. So we have to recognize what we lost. And then as we go through that and we begin to recognize what we lost and to do the gentle healing and self-acceptance of ourselves, we can enter a time of Elul and say, you know what? I cried, I mourned, and I'm not alone. I'm not alone because ani v'dodi li. Because I am my beloved to God, and whatever this God is, that God is beloved to me. And as we enter in this relationship with something larger than ourselves, it's not so lonely to admit our foibles and how we miss the mark. This is why Elul precedes High Holidays. It's a gentle, like as Paul was saying, it's a time of reckoning and a time of awe, but I also add to it, it's a time of gentle reckoning, of compassionate reckoning. One of the most incredible things about working at Beit Tshuva that I've had, or working in any healing community at Shaare Zedek, is something happens when you go into a healing community where there's no shame anymore. When you're in a hospital and someone's ill, you know, if they're naked, you know, if you poop on the floor, so you had an accident, you clean it up. There's no more shame. And so we enter into that space in the time preceding Yamim Noraim, so we can stand before our God and know before whom we stand. So let's take a look now, as we do this work, at our Heshbon HaNefesh sheets. I'm just going to give a little tutorial, and then I'd like everyone to actually form little groups and start doing this work in small groups. So the first one we have is a spiritual exercise based on the teachings of Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Satanov. And so he categorized, and it's two-sided, don't think we're going to get through it all, but he categorized each of these qualities that we need to work on. So I'll just speak a little bit of them. So there's anava, humility. You know, am I taking up too much space in the world? There's zerizut, there's diligence. You know, am I a slacker or am I walking the walk? Or am I just talking the talk? There's Zedek, righteousness. You know, are we an upright person, a trustworthy person? There's menuchat HaNefesh, equanimity. Equanimity is the idea that as the storm is fierce surrounding you, you can keep your calmness in it. I think a lot of women learn equanimity through motherhood. Men, I'm not so sure. No. All right. There's haritzut, which is decisiveness. Do we waver back and forth, or are we able to be incisive in our lives and make decisions? Sablanut, Carmageddon, traffic. How do we deal? Nekiyut, cleanliness. You know, are we dignified in the way we interact in our lives? Are we clean in our relations and our relationships? Do we leave loose ends? Do we hold grudges? That could be a lack of cleanliness. Seder, which is little order in our lives. Are we OCD? We are Jews. So are we allowing ourselves to be less empirical with the way that we order our lives? I say there's a dark side to order as well. Kimutz, which is frugality. Are we excessive? Do we overindulge? Do we excessively move through resources? What's our use of plastic, and do we recycle? Shtika, silence. This is now on the other side. Bitachon, trust. Do we try to control others? Or can we stand in their movements and observe them and allow the world to move around us? Prishut, separation. Do we distance ourselves from unhealthy relationships? Or do we surround ourselves and create unhealthy attachments? Metinut, deliberation. Mitunin vadin, the rabbis teach us in the Mishnah. We should be purposeful and deliberate in our judgment. Are we contemplative before we act? Nechiut, calmness. Do we express our needs gently, or are we more using our communication with incisive strength? Hishtapkut, temperance. Are we moderate in our lifestyles? Emet. Do we lie? Tzniut. Do we use hyperbole and exaggerated truth and grandiosely expressing who we are and our children's accomplishments? Or are we more modest in how we offer ourselves? And nedivut, generosity. As we're here tonight, remembering others in need, do we give the nedivat lev, the offerings of our hearts in our lives? This is just what one rabbi saw as possibly a laundry list that can begin to prepare us for these days ahead. They're in no ways all-inclusive. There are many more that we could come up with, but I worked with Rabbi Michael Resnick, who's a friend of mine. He used to be at Adat Shalom. He's now in Palm Beach, Florida. The two of us came up with this list together based on doing learning of the rabbi, and we thought that these really represented it nicely. Then we have the evaluation. So as we've just contemplated those together, what we're going to do is the evaluation, and this is where we're going to turn and be participatory with our new friends. This is time to get real. Let's work on these together. I didn't, I'm sorry, I didn't bring pens. Now I realize it's the only thing I forgot. So if everyone has a pen or can share pens, that would be great. But let's now
Bring us down more if people want.
Let's take about 10 minutes out. I'm nearing the end of my presentation, and then we'll come back at the end, and I'll give a last 2 minutes to kind of allow everyone.
So anybody wants pens, I can go get some.
Great, that'd be
Anybody
great.
want pens?
So let's find a partner, because Hevuta Ometuta, find a friend or die. Let's find a partner to kind of tease these out and keep us real. That'd be great. Or maybe you can just work together in teams. Find a Hevuta, so you can work together in teams. You two are in teams. Just a final ending, which is discussing the fourth name for Rosh Hashanah, which we didn't say. This is for you, Helen. It's Carol, sorry.
Oh.
It's for you, Carol. So what is this fourth name of Rosh Hashanah? What is this fourth name? It's, anyone? It's Yom Harat HaOlam.
Oh.
It's the day of the birth of not only the world. The world is Olam in the Bible. The rabbi saw Olam as eternity. So we can say it's the beginning of the birth of the world, or it's the beginning of the birth of our eternity, of our place in time. And I just want to harken back, when we look at the Bible, right after Yom Noraim, we have Sukkot, which is this central time of rejoicing, and then we end with Simchat Torah. And we rewind the whole story to the beginning again, and we start with this very same thing, creation, and then we jump right into what I call the stories of the first dysfunctional Jewish family. And how that first dysfunctional Jewish family really becomes the model of how we grow and we learn in this world. And each of us has our own little microcosm of that family. And we all inherit from that, not that everyone is excessively dysfunctional, but Tolstoy said all happy families are alike, every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way, Anna Karenina. So we each have something that we begin with that isn't perfect. And from that, maybe we're looking for our tikkun in life. Maybe this year, in the Yamim Noraim, our Yom HaZikaron becomes the day that we remember the ancestors that were before us, that gave us an inheritance of lots of complexity. And that family constellation is our inheritance, and our destiny is determined by the work that we do to heal that personal tikkun that we've inherited. And maybe the Yom Teruah, the day of shaking and reckoning of our destiny, is that awakening of who we are. Oh my God, look at who I really am and how I became this way. And maybe then, when we move on to this, in the end, Yom Harat HaOlam, it's not just the creation of the world, it's the creation of us and our place in this world. So my blessing for all of us as we enter these Yamim Noraim is to keep them real, Let's go to shul this year and bring ourselves to life. And through that revivification of ourselves, we can have compassion and meet another person and bring them to life. And maybe if we all did that, the world can make a little more sense, and there would be less need for healing and more need for rejoicing. So, not that Shaare Zedek should close. But anyway, thank you so much for allowing me to share.